I want to thank some people who were behind this event. Of course, Emanuel, Segre, Amar, Volker Megnagi, and Ilan Boni, who are here, David Nesimiha, Sarah Modena, and from Israel, Ronen Leffler, who is the CEO of a company named Newsrael. Newsrael produced an application for the cell phone, both Android and iPhone, named Newsrael, which gives like 100 items every day, almost 100, about Israel, about Hamas, about Hezbollah, about Iran, about adjacent topics. Please download it, it's for free. If you want it without advertisement, it will cost you only $5 per month. And please use it, because this is, in my humble view, and I'm the biased, of course, I'm the vice president of the company, this is the best source of information about Israel and what goes on in Israel. Every half an hour we have 3, 4 more items. Please use it. Newsrael, this is the name. And to your question, Maurizio, why October 7? If you listen to Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, it is because of the occupation. Of course, because of the occupation. Israeli girls have to be raped, Israeli boys and girls have to be decapitated and burned, 1,200 of Israelis have to be butchered in one day because of the occupation. What occupation? Be'eri and Nahal Oz are Israel. Before 1960, the occupation of 1967. There's the occupation of 1948. And this is the issue. Means Israel entirely is occupation. Because Israel, according to Guterres apparently, and of course Hamas, and all those who support Hamas, Israel has no right to exist. This is why the occupation, which started in 1948, not only in 1967. And this is actually what underlies. For Hamas, Tel Aviv is a settlement, just like Be'eri and Nahal Oz and all these places around Gaza. Tel Aviv is illegitimate because it was built by Jews. And here is the problem. Hamas, as you know, is the initials in Arabic of Harakat al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya. Means the Islamic resistance movement. Islamic, not Arab, not Palestinian, not socialist, not democratic, no nothing. Islamic. Means they derive from the Islamic thought their ideology. According to their interpretation of Islam, Israel has absolutely no right to exist. Why? 4 reasons, accumulative reasons. The first reason is that Judaism as a religion is null and void. Doesn't exist anymore. Din batil, as they say in Arabic. Din batil means religion which is batel, means cancelled, because it was replaced by Christianity. You know the theory of replacement. Christianity was replaced by Islam. And now Christianity also is din batil, religion which is cancelled, and only Islam is din haq, means religion of truth. So since Judaism doesn't exist anymore, so there is no reason to have a Jewish state. This is the first problem. Second problem is the land. The whole land is Islamic land, because once it was under Islamic rule. under the Ottomans, under the Mamluks, as of 637. Sorry, please make your cell phone silent. Since 637 CE, when this land was occupied by the Muslims, it belongs to Islam. So nobody has the right to take a land from the Islamic world and to give it to Jews. Why? Because a land, according to Islam, is only one-way ticket to enter the house of Islam and not to come out. Just like Spain, the Iberian Peninsula, just like Sicily, which belongs to Islam as well, until the large parts of the Balkans, all the way to the gates of Vienna, where they were defeated in September 11, 1683. This is the connection. So Israel as well, means Palestine, as they call it, as well, belongs to Islam entirely. So this is the second problem. The third problem is that Jews are not a nation. Jews are Jewish communities. Here in Italy, Jews are Italians who belong to the Jewish religion, just like other Italians who belong to other religions. Jew in Iraq is an Iraqi Arab who happen to be Jewish, just like other Iraqi Arabs who are Muslims, Christians, Yazidis, Sabais, Mandays, and there are 10 religions in Iraq. A Jew in America is an American national who happen to be Jewish, just like other Americans. It's simply Jewish in Russia, in Morocco, everywhere. Jews are local nationals who are Jewish. All of a sudden, they decided they are a nation. They are not a nation. They don't look the same. They don't sound the same. They speak different languages. They wear different clothing. They eat different food. They sing to different music. So are not a nation. And if they are not a nation, why do they need a state? The fourth problem is that according to the Islamic Sharia, means the religious rule, religious law, Jews have to live under Islamic Sharia as dhimmis. Dhimmis means people who live under the yoke of Islam with very limited rights. Jews should pay the jizya, means head tax, when they are humiliated, according to the Quran, means they should crawl on the ground, pay the jizya from their hand, get a kick, and run out of the room, because this is what the Quran states about Jews. Jews should walk in the sewage canal in the street and not on the sidewalk, just like Christians, by the way. And sewage canal in the Middle Ages had everything which comes out from the households and not only from the kitchens. And this is where Jews and Christians should walk, in the dirt of the sewage canal, because they are dhimmis. Jews should be marked with yellow patch. And this was not an invention of the Nazis. This was already in Baghdad, the Abbasid Baghdad of the 9th century. Either yellow patch or yellow scarf or yellow hat. Christians should have purple patch or purple scarf or purple head. Why? Because both Jews and Christians are najis, means impure. And in order to make sure that no Muslim touches them, they have to be marked. The Nazis took it from the Islamic idea. And many more ways how to denigrate and how to humiliate the Jews and the Christians. And this is how Jews should live under Islam. Jews have no right to a state, no right to a government, no right to an army, no right to a police, no right to any manifestation of independence and sovereignty. So the state of Israel is actually a deed of a Satan, because it's against Islam, against the Islamic ideas of replacement of Judaism. And the worst is when Jews are praying on the Temple Mount, because this is actually the completion of the resurrection of Judaism. After Islam came to the world to replace and to cancel Judaism. Means the state of Israel is actually viewed by Muslims as a resurrection of Judaism. And they cannot take it. They cannot fathom this fact. This is why the war is a religious war before it is anything about territory or about human rights or about political rights or whatever. It is, first of all, to save Islam from the returning of Judaism to life. And this is what underlies everything, and this is shared by Sunnah and Shia as well, who are different in many things. But this actually explains why Iran, the Shi'i leader of the Shi'i Islam, cooperates with Hamas, which are religious Sunnis, because they share the same view to Judaism as a cancelled religion, and therefore Jews have no right to anything.
Okay, this is very clear. Let's try to do a step more. If what happened on October the 7th was that Islamic fundamentalism attacked Israel, we have to ask ourselves if after the long season of wars between Israel and Arab nationalism that started in 1948, we are facing the beginning of a new season of wars, not with Arab states, but with Islamic organizations. Now, in the case of Arab nationalism, in 1948, we started with wars, and we arrived, in some cases, to peace treaties, from Camp David
Egypt,
to the Abraham Accord, to the point that the Emirates, if you speak with the Emirates people, they say we accept the existence of the Jews because the Jews always belong to this area.
Right.
Now, is this a path?
And they are good Muslims.
And correct. Now, is this a path that Israel could follow to tackle the new enemy?
Well, for this we have to understand the Islamic approach to Israel and to other things. Schematically, the Islamic world is divided to two parts. And you know, many of us know Muslims in the workplace, living in the neighborhood. We know them, and they are peaceful people. Many of them, maybe even most of them. Schematically, the Islamic world is divided between two mindsets. One mindset says that they are Muslims, are faithful to Islam, they pray 5 times a day, they fast on Ramadan, they go once in a lifetime to Hajj in Mecca, they don't drink wine or any other alcoholic beverages, they don't eat pork, and they keep Islam. And they are religious Muslims. Many of them are in Israel as well. Many of them serve in the army. In the Israeli army, Muslims, there are. They don't mix Islam and politics. Politics means their own states, Israel, economy, anything connected to this world, to the worldly issues. They don't make any connection. They are religious on one side, and yet they take interest in the bank, although it is, or they pay interest, which is also forbidden in Islam. They don't mix worldly issues with Islam. This is the Emirates. For them, To be a Muslim is one thing, and to be a statesman in the world as it is, it's something totally different. They don't mix the Islamic view, as I mentioned, to the worldly issues. The other side of Islam, I would describe it as the Ikhwani Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood kind of Islam, is an interpretation of Islam which sees everything through the lens of Islam. As I described the state of Israel, everything, economy, the regimes, even the regime in Egypt, the regime in Syria, the regime everywhere, is being viewed through the lens of Islam. Do they implement the Sharia? Good. If not, jihad should be waged against Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt or against Assad, father and son, in Syria, because they don't implement the Sharia. And this is totally different way of how to look at Islam and the way Islam is involved in everything which runs the world. This is why Israel is the small Satan, the United States is a big Satan, and Europe is the middle-sized Satan. Okay? This is how they look at the world, through the lens of Islam. And this is where the problem is. Israel has no problem with the first kind of thinking. By the way, if you actually trace the history, you see that the Egyptian regime, which made peace with Israel, was fighting the Muslim Brotherhood. Sadat was hanging them in the streets. King Hussein, who made peace with us, he was killing the Muslim Brotherhood, because the Muslim Brotherhood against the system, because the system is run by the world, by the Christian world, by the United Nations, by America, by Britain, by all these infidels, or by Soviet Union when it came to Gamal Abdel Nasser. And the Soviet Union were also infidels. So even Muslims like Gamal Abdel Nasser and King Hussein, who are directed or operated as marionettes by the West, they actually are the long hand of the West. This is why they deserve a jihad. Okay? Because they are the enemy. And this is why Egypt had no problem with Israel, because they fight the Ikhwani way of thinking. So is Jordan, the regime of Jordan. And so are the Emirates. So this is what you see today. Well, already many years, since peace with Egypt was in 1979. As of 79, we are almost more than 40 years. Means those regimes who do not mix Islam or do not look at everything through the lens of Islam as the Muslim Brotherhood, they look at the world as it is and cooperate with the world as it is, they have no problem to sit with Israel. While those who are run by political Islam, which mix politics and Islam, like Iran, like Hamas, like Hezbollah, like Qatar, like Houthis in Yemen, of course. So all those are against Israel and against the United States, against the shipping traffic near the, because this is part of the world order, the economy of the world. And they are against the system, the world system. And of course, Europe, everything. So this is the difference. Now, you mentioned organizations. And actually, what you see today is that Israel has to fight not states, but organizations. Hamas in Gaza, and Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah in Lebanon, 17 pro-Iranian militias in Syria, more than 50 organizations in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen. What is happening here? The Iranians, don't forget, they invented the chess. They are bright people. By the way, the percentage of students, graduates, who finished real sciences means mathematics, physics, chemistry, architecture, computers, in Iran is the highest in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, not political science or sociology, anthropology. This is nothing. I'm talking about real sciences. The percentage of the graduates in Iran of real sciences is the highest in the world. They are bright people. What did they do? They helped destroying states like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and implanted organizations to carry out their plan. Why organizations? States are bound with the international law, with the United Nations, with the Security Council, with all kinds of courts in Den Haag, in Hague. You know, the ICC, ICJ, in Geneva, the Human Rights Council. States are bound, states are limited. Organizations are free to do whatever they like without any accountability to anyone, because they are organizations. And this is what Iran did. Filled the whole Middle East with organizations which can do whatever Iran wants without any limit, without any restrictions. And this is the satanic plan of the Iranians to devastate the other side of Islam, like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia not only, by the way, the Islamic divide, not only Saudi Arabia is not Ikhwani. In Saudi Arabia, the Islam supports the state. It's not only division. The Islam is the seal of hechsher, of approval on anything which the government decides. The Islam serves politics in Saudi Arabia. And this is the kind of Islam. Therefore, they cannot agree on anything when people use Islam against the state. Because in Saudi Arabia, Islam is part of the state, supports the state. So Saudi Arabia definitely is with us, because Saudi Arabia is against the Ikhwani way of thinking. This is why, by the way, Saudi Arabia supported President Sisi in Egypt when he kicked out Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood president, who was nominated in the middle of 2012, and exactly 1 year later, in the middle of 2013, Sisi kicked him out with the support of the Saudis. Because the Saudis are against the Muslim Brotherhood. Here, now you can see the picture, and now you can understand the picture. By the way, who supported the Muslim Brotherhood thinking? Obama.
Okay, let's go step by step. Now,
and Iran.
Okay. We are getting an extraordinary lesson. So my prayer is to pay attention to what our guest is telling all of us, okay? We need patience, and we need a lot of knowledge, and we have to appreciate the time that we are spending with him.
The WhatsApp doesn't listen to the silence.
Now, Mr. Kedar, if you are telling us that the most difficult challenge in terms of security to Israel is coming from political Islam,
yeah,
both Sunni and Shia, and if we see that Sunni states are not joining this enemy, but in reality are siding, even if quietly, but with
behind the scenes,
correct, with Israel.
right?
Now, does here we have an opportunity to find in the nationalistic Arab camp in the states, I mean, in the Sunni Arab state, a partner to tackle political Islam?
It is an all-out war between two sides of Islam. Look, you might remember what happened at 4 o'clock in the morning of September 14, 2019. September 14, 2019. It was like 5 years ago. 14, it will be, what, in 6 days, it will be 5 years. Barrage of missiles and drones launched from Yemen, from Iraq, and from Iran, attacked two major sites of the Saudis of oil production. One is named Abqaiq, and the other one is called Kharis. And they destroyed some 50%, 50% of the oil production of the Saudis for like half a year. Big damage. Why did they do it? They detected, apparently, negotiations between Israel and Saudi Arabia to normalize the relations. Because the Abraham Accords were signed a few months later. Saudi Arabia should have been part of it. But the Iranians gave the Saudis this hit in order to tell them, hey guys, you don't go with the Israelis. I don't know why they didn't hit the Emirates as well. But the Emirates were not attacked, so they continued with Israel. Of course, with the blessing of Saudi Arabia, which didn't join. In my view, because of this. 3 months later, in January 2020, the United States got rid of Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds force, who was behind this attack. Okay? So this is, therefore, Saudi Arabia is very cautious. They are very much afraid. Because militarily, Saudi Arabia is a weak country. They have money, they have influence, but from the military point of view, the Saudis are weak. They did not succeed to defeat the Houthis for 8 years. 8 years they were fighting the Houthis. The Houthis devastated Saudi Arabia. Okay? So Saudi Arabia always looks for a powerful country to rely on. Unfortunately, because of the war between us and Gaza, and because of the issues inside Israel, and we'll talk about this, Israel is viewed today not as a powerful state. This is actually what encouraged Hamas to attack us, because of the domestic problems which we had in Israel. Saudi Arabia is waiting, and now the Saudi demand is to have mutual defense treaties with the United States of America as a condition for normalizing with Israel. Why? They are afraid of the Iranians. They are afraid that the Iranians will repeat what they did on September 14, 2019. And the Saudis are very vulnerable. All their oil production industry is on the ground, exposed to the Iranians. And this is why they are very cautious. They are very slowly, they are running to nowhere, there are no rush, and they are waiting for the Americans to give them mutual defense treaties as a condition for a peace with Israel.
In this fight between political Islam and the State of Israel, where does the Palestinians stand?
The Palestinians are divided also between the PLO, which tries to be with the good side, means with Egypt, Jordan, while Hamas is wholeheartedly with the political Islam. Why? Hamas is also against the PLO, because the PLO is part of the system, because the PA, the Palestinian Authority, was created by agreement between Israel, the small Satan, and the PLO, which is not a religious organization, it's nationalistic organization. The PLO does not emphasize Islam because the PLO has Christians in it. You know, George Habash was a Christian. Naif Hawatma, Christian. Wadi Haddad, the Black September organization, is a Christian. So there are Christian terrorists within the PLO. So the PLO did not emphasize the Islamic side or Islamic aspect of their fight. Hamas is Islamic by definition. So Hamas belongs to the political Islam part of Islam, and the PLO is part of the system, means the nationalistic one with Egypt, with Jordan, with Israel to some extent, although the PLO, I think I have it here, produces these things. On one side, and this is the PLO flag. On one side it says Al-Quds Lana, Jerusalem is ours, means theirs. But on the other side, Palestine, from the river to the sea. So where is Israel? In the Mediterranean, within the sharks and the fish. Okay? And this is our partners to, by the way, they are the people behind the courts in Hague against Israel. South Africa is only the state which forwarded the information. But all the information which was given to the courts in Hague come from 4 organizations run by the PA, sponsored, at least partially, by the European Union. So the Italian taxpayers actually is used in order to delegitimize the state of Israel in the courts of Hague. Think about this.
As you said, this deep split inside the Israeli society gave to Hamas and the political Islam the perception of a weak state.
Yeah.
So the question here is, first, how deep is this split, and can this split be healed?
Well, Israel, as we all know, is a mixture of cultures, because we Jews came from more than 100 states all over the world to our ancestors' land, the land of Israel. And everyone who came from wherever they came brought their culture, which they absorbed wherever they lived for centuries. Therefore, the Israeli society has the whole spectrum between the ultra-Orthodox Haredim on one side and the ultra-Orthodox, ultra-liberal, secular people for whom the Jewish religion means nothing. Totally secular. And they define themselves as Jews by nationality, not by religion. And this is a whole spectrum of the society of Israel, and I believe in many places in the world, the Jewish communities also have a very large array of ideas between the Haredim and the ultra-liberals. Okay? The same is in Israel. The state was originally established by the Labor Party or the Labor Movement, which came originally from Eastern Europe. And they were socialists. And by the way, this is the reason why the Soviet Union was the first country to recognize Israel, because they believed that Israel will be another state as an extension of the Soviet Pact, the Warsaw Pact. And in many cases of this group which established the state was, Zionism for them was the replacement for Judaism. They wanted to get rid of what they call the shtetl in Yiddish, the small Jewish town, to get rid of the galut, of exile, by kicking out Judaism, because now we are the new Jews, we are peasants, we are working in agriculture, we are fighters, and you could see the illustrations of the new Jew those days, of the 20s and the 30s, blonde, blue eyes, with a weapon, totally detached from Judaism as a religion, yet nationalistic. This is one side. The other side said, well, we are Zionists, but we are religious. For us, Zionism is part of the religion. And the Zionist movement actually included a large array of people from Achad Ha'am, from one side, who was totally liberal, all the way to Rabbi Kalischer, who was what we say today modern Orthodox, who was Orthodox yet Zionist. These are the array. With the years, the more conservative part of the society became bigger and bigger because of birth rate, especially people who came from Islamic countries like North Africa, like Iraq, like Syria, Lebanon, of course Morocco, Yemen. Their birth rate was traditionally higher, while the Ashkenazim, those who came from Eastern Europe, liberals, everywhere in the world, within liberal circles, secular circles, birth rate is lower. For various reasons, we won't get into this. We know it from everywhere in the world. And for the years, and don't forget that we are more than 100 years, the Zionist movement, which started towards the beginning of the 20th century. The first Zionist convention was in Basel in 1897. Means what? Almost 130 years ago. Add to this the Moshavot HaBaron, Petach Tikva, Rosh Pina, Rishon LeZion, Rehovot, Nes Ziona, were all established in the 80s of the 19th century. 1882 started in Petach Tikva. So we are talking about almost 150 years of the Zionist movement. So people who came from Eastern states like North Africa, Arab world, Islamic world, they have large number of children traditionally, while those who came from Europe have lower number of children. Add to this migration from Israel, and unfortunately many left Israel through the years. Secular people tend more to leave Israel because they don't believe in their soul that Israel, they can live in Italy, they can live in Britain, they can live in the United States. For them it doesn't make much of a difference because anyway they don't believe in Judaism as a religion. So for them to leave Israel is much easier than people who really believe that Zion, is our place. So with the year, because of high birth rate on one side and high rate of leaving Israel on the other side, it came to the situation that today the conservative circles in Israel are much bigger than the liberal ones. And when it comes to voting to the Knesset, you know, after all, Israel is a democracy, one man, one vote. More and more, the part of the Knesset is conservative, Haredi, modern Orthodox, or Masorti, or conservative anyway, even not totally religious. But those who establish the state keep thinking that the state belongs to them. And this is today actually the struggle between those, the majority of the state, of the society, which is traditional, conservative, religious, ultra-religious, combined, and those who are secular, or totally secular, or liberal, or those. And every round of elections, every 4 years, when we have 4 years, the results are more indicative of this situation in the society. And this is actually the struggle. Everybody thinks that this is democracy. Those, the secular ones, keep thinking that democracy is when they are in government, although they are a minority, while the majority think that they should be in the, you know, the majority of the Knesset because they are the majority in the people. So this is actually the struggle. Unfortunately, the minority of the liberals control the media. They are in the court system because they keep bringing their people to the system and kicking out the conservatives. They are in the economy. The money is there. The arts and the academic institutions are liberal, most of them. So when they control the court system, the media, the economy, the arts, and the academia, they actually hold the state in the throat, especially by the court system. Now, the court system in Israel, think about the supreme judge, the president, Aaron Barak, who is still, although he is over 90 years old, he is in the court every day, in his office in the court, and he controls everything. The judges in lower levels, the legal advisories, and the prosecution. All are directed by the ultra-liberal Supreme Court. And the results are clear. If you have a prime minister whom they don't like, they will open all kinds of files against him. And this is actually what Netanyahu has to face. While they let alone others who are not from their milieu. Okay, so this is actually what happens in Israel. And unfortunately, those liberals allow themselves to destroy the army by convincing all kinds of groups in the army, like pilots, fighters, not to volunteer to miluim, to reserve. What does it mean? Israel's army is miluim. The regular army is very small. The biggest part of the army in a war is miluim. People who are 30 years old, 40 years old, those, the engineers and the architects and whatever they are, they leave everything and they go to the army when they are needed. But if they don't volunteer, Israel has no army. So through 2023, the year of the struggle between the liberals and the conservatives, every couple of days we saw in the newspapers another petition of 200, 300, 400, 500 fighters who said that we are not volunteering to the army because the government wants to change the balance between the Supreme Court and the Knesset. Because in Israel, the Supreme Court controls the Knesset. The Knesset cannot make any law without the Supreme Court approval. We are voting for the Knesset, but the Knesset is not sovereign. The sovereign is the court. which is not elected by anyone. It is nominated by a group of people who perpetuate themselves in the court system. This is not a democracy. This is juristocracy. Yeah, this is how they call themselves. Juristocracy. And not only this, the judicial advisor of the government has to approve any decision of the government. Means the government actually is ruled not by the prime minister, but by the judicial advisor. A lady who was nominated by the liberals in the days of the former government. And nobody can kick her out because she's professional. And the Supreme Court will not allow to fire her. So this is how we vote for, let's say, for the right, and we are controlled by the left through the Supreme Court, through the judicial system. And this was the struggle. Will the Knesset be liberated from the control of the Supreme Court or not? And this actually what was the struggle in 2023. So, all those who hold the state by the throat and with foreign money, which came from all kinds of places in the world, including Qatar, which supports the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, had a whole wave of petitions against the government, against the Knesset, against the decision, in support of the court, which should, according to their ideas, continue to control the whole state. Means Qatar, the country which supports Hamas, also supports this protest movement, as they call it. And when Hamas saw what happens in Israel, they understood that there is no army, that there is no air force, there is no Shabak, also because Shabak also was part of this rebellion against the Knesset and the government. And they decided, let's go on Israel, because there is no army. And there is no air force. Of course, after a few hours, Israel understood what's happening and gave them a hit. Okay, they were wrong in their calculation. But October 7 would not have happened if not this struggle of the privileged against the majority of the people.
Now you can drink some water, please.
Thank you so much. ברוך אתה ה' לכולם, שהכל נהיה בדברו.
If this is the description of a very deep division in the state and in Israeli society, what does still keep Israel together?
Well, fortunately, those who don't care about the state to a degree that they would destroy the army if the state is not controlled by them, they are a minority. Not marginal one, but they are a minority. The majority of the people want the state, want to come to terms, want to come to some kind of agreement between the sides, to be able to live together between religious and non-religious, between liberal and conservative, because the alternative is to go back to exile. And people are aware of it. And the existence of the state is dear for 99% of the people. And this is what we count on. Look, when the war started in October 7 and October 8, you couldn't find a place on any airplane in the world come to Israel, because all the Israelis, tourists and residents and relocationists, just hurried up to Israel to join the units, religious and non-religious alike, liberal and conservative together. You know, in one case in JFK, they were fighting who will take the last seat on El Al. So El Al saw it, so he said, come down, we'll rent an airplane. So come down. Okay? This is the Israelis. When we smell a problem, a danger, we leave all the problems, all the disputes, all the differences, and we grab the rifle and we run to fight. Because we know the alternative. The alternative of unity is non-existent. And this is why I'm optimistic that in the end of the day, they will find a way how to coexist. Because if they don't, everybody is aware of the result.
In terms of political split, do you believe the Prime Minister Netanyahu is part of the problem or maybe part of the solution?
Depends what your position is. If you, by the way, there are many in the right side of the political map who think that Netanyahu exhausted his credit. Means, although they are right-wingish, conservative, yet they think that Netanyahu, after what, 18 years combined of being a prime minister, the time for him to go home and to write his memoir and leave the because you know nobody came to the world to remain here forever. I have news for you. All of us, one day, will leave the world for our descendants. Okay? Netanyahu included. One day, he will leave. So let it be now. So many, even in the right, claim that Netanyahu should leave. Of course, those in the left definitely do not want him because he's too powerful for them. He's too resilient. He is too resistant. Look at what happened today vis-a-vis Biden, vis-a-vis the others in America, in Europe, in other places. Just to compare, the government before was run by two people, Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid. Yair Lapid became the prime minister of the interim government, which started its life in July 1st, 2022. For 4 months, July, August, September, October, because on the 1st of November, there was supposed to be elections. So 4 months of interim government. And this was the decision. On the second day of July, one day after he became a prime minister, Hezbollah sent 3 drones with cameras only, to a gas facility, Israeli gas facility in the sea, and took a picture, as if they can attack it. Because they could have not only a camera, they could also have explosives. But they sent him with a camera, and they published the film, how they take picture of the Karish facility in the sea. Lapid, the prime minister, got afraid that in his time as a prime minister, this achievement of Israel to find out the gas in the sea will be blown up by Hezbollah. So he ran immediately to mark the border between Israel and Lebanon in the sea according to the demands of Hezbollah, giving Hezbollah parts of Israel's part of the sea. Means he succumbed to Hezbollah because of 3 drones with cameras. He signed this agreement towards the end of October, a few days before the elections, in spite of the fact that there was a big objection inside Israel against this agreement. because he was blackmailed by Hezbollah. Netanyahu would not be blackmailed. Netanyahu would, for sure, will not agree to such kind. But Lapid has no idea about the Middle East. He gave a speech to explain what he did, full of things which everybody who listened to them understood that the man does not understand at all. He's a journalist. He knows how to tell stories. Okay, he's not a... But this is what happened. And Israel was today stuck with an agreement which we have to... By the way, he gave a big blow to the Israeli deterrence. Because if Israel is afraid of 3 drones with cameras, Israel is too afraid. And what happens today with Hezbollah is one of the results of this agreement which Lapid gave the Hezbollah in Lebanon with so much fear. And this is actually what...
The last question...
And Lapid is one of the most liberal people who understands nothing in the Middle East.
The last question before opening the floor for questions from the public. What is the role in this scenario that you are describing of the Turkish President Erdogan?
Well, today we heard that Erdogan is calling upon the Islamic world to unite against Israel. Okay? That's what we heard today. This is the news. I was actually interviewed by Sky News on the way to here in Arabic about this. So, of course, who will join him? The Muslim Brotherhood, because Erdogan is a Muslim Brotherhood kind of thinking, because he was against the system of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the secular founder of modern Turkey. Erbakan in the 90s and Erdogan as of 2002, they turned Turkey back to Islam because they are against the system, against the secularism, against everything. So this is Erdogan. So who will join him? Iran, Houthis, the Hamas will join him. Everyone who is against the system. Who will not join him? Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, all those countries which are against the Muslim Brotherhood. So it's against. Not only this, Erdogan is hypocrite. I would expect him, if he wants a war against Israel, the whole Islamic world against Israel, why doesn't he close the embassy in Israel, the Turkish embassy in Israel? Why does he allow airplanes to fly between Turkey and Israel? Why does he build buildings in Israel? You know, there is a big construction company in Turkey named Yilmaz. If you go in Tel Aviv, you see in many construction places the sign Yilmaz. They are building. They brought their people, they brought their engineers, they bring everything. And they are building Israel. Of course, this is a business. They are producing clothing for Israel in Turkey. They are producing pasta for Israel in Turkey with Hersher. Okay, so and actually the Turkish economy, I don't say they are based on Israel, but part of the Turkish economy, which is today on the verge of bankruptcy. Today they are almost bankrupt. They depend on Israel. So on one side, he fights against Israel with all these slogans, but on the other side, he knows very well how to cooperate with Israel for his own benefit. However, today, and I would conclude my presentation, Israel is fighting the political Islam, Iran and all the other Muslim Brotherhood organizations. Israel is the front bastion of the Western civilization in the Middle East. If Israel is defeated by the political Islam, they will be in the shores of Europe in no time. because they will be encouraged. The glands of jihad will be inflated. And the Atlantic Ocean is not wide enough to keep the Americas safe from the same wave of jihadism, which will be totally encouraged by the collapse of Israel. Those who support Israel from this continent actually defend themselves from this wave of jihadism. This is why, in my humble view, Israel should be supported by whoever wants to continue in a civilized world. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Mordechai Kedar. And now is the time to ask questions. If we have, please, one here in front. Do we have a microphone for the gentleman?
Yes, but it should be translated.
Here, please.
La parola?
Posso parlare in italiano, in ebraico, in inglese?
Inglese.
In inglese. Inglese, ok. One question. I agreed about the most part of the analysis of the Muslim world and the Muslim way of thinking, everything. I'm not agreed about all the part about the Israeli policy. I want to come back to the 7th of October. Who is responsible that on the border of Gaza there were 700 or 800 soldiers with 3 tanks, and it leaves no army. It was not Bennett, it was not Lapid, and who is responsible?
Well,
Thank you. Please,
who is?
go ahead.
Yeah. Israel, for years, both the political arena and the professional arena. Professional arena, I mean the intelligence, both military and Shabak, Mossad. We were deceived by Hamas. Why? Hamas, you might remember, took Gaza over in mid-June 2007. October 2023, it's 16 and a half years after Hamas took Gaza over. Through these years, Hamas demanded money. They demanded that Israel allows workers to come to Israel to work. They wanted more food to be transferred from Israel, and they paid. And they wanted construction materials, to build buildings and everything, also tunnels. And the impression it was in Israel, since we are Westerners, that Hamas wants a state, developed state, with good health, good system of education, transportation, normal state. And most of the Israelis, in the intelligence, in the Shabak, in the government, were more than convinced that this is what Hamas wants, to have a state. And they actually put the jihad in the boydem. I don't know why you said the boydem. Boydem is the part in your apartment which you don't go to, in the ceiling. Behind, above the ceiling is where you put old stuff which you don't need. And it's in your home, but you don't use it. And this is what we thought, that they put the jihad in the boydem. And they actually want to run a state, to establish a state, and the jihad will wait for a long time. This was the impression. They surprised us, no doubt. They were preparing an army to attack us. Not in one place, not in two places. They found out that they crossed the border in 119 places to run to all the kibbutzim, all the moshavim around Gaza, to kill, to rape, to steal, to whatever they could do. We didn't expect it. We maybe expected one place, two places, but such an assault, nobody expected. And this is, excuse me, there were at least two people. One was a lady who, Nagedet Vav. Nagedet is corporal. Vav means, her name starts with Vav. I know her name. I know the lady. So from my unit. So far it was not revealed, so I don't say her name. She wrote a whole paper, 30 pages, about the plan of Hamas. But nobody believed it. Because all the demands of Hamas were always to increase the number of people who will come to Israel to work and to bring money. And this made the impression that that's all they want. Another one wrote another paper named Chomot Yericho, the walls of Jericho, which also talked about the plan of Hamas to attack Israel, and this was based on documents of Hamas. Yet, the upper echelons did not believe that this can happen. They were caught in conception that this cannot and will not happen. To that degree, look, after all, 16 and a half years, there was not just such a thing. 16 and a half years is how many days? Multiple it with 16, almost 6,000 days. 6,000 days. Every day is like the previous day. Of course, we had once in a while rounds of violence which didn't increase to be such a thing.
If you have a question, please raise your hand.
So this was the reason, the main reason, why there was no army around Gaza that day. There are people who claim that this was a conspiracy in order to hit Netanyahu. I don't believe in this, of course.
Yes, the question was, if I may say, if the Prime Minister doesn't have a political responsibility for what happened.
Of course he has responsibility. But the Prime Minister doesn't have an intelligence of his own to tell him another thing. He depends on the intelligence. He doesn't have Shabak, the civil security. Another one to tell him another story. He doesn't have another Mossad to tell him another story. He doesn't have tools to know what happens in Gaza, apart from the tools which keep telling him that Hamas are murta and mukhal, means they are deterred and confined. He doesn't have his own private intelligence organizations which will tell him another story. And it depends on what comes
we have some other questions. I will gather some questions, so allowing him to answer all together. So we have 1, 2, and 3. We'll take all the questions and then he will answer.
By the way, before the questions, if you may, I say Kaddish. So if 10 people can stay here after the event for Ma'ariv, I'll be highly appreciative.
Of course.
Okay, thank you so much.
Please, go ahead.
Parlo in italiano, lei dottore magari traduce. Un argomento che non è stato toccato questa sera, che ritengo molto molto importante. Il dibattito e come sta andando l'arruolamento dei Haredim e come si sta sviluppando la cosa. Le dichiarazioni dei grandi rabbanim la lotta interna, il rifiuto di molti e l'adesione di molti altri invece che spontaneamente si sono presentati. Toda rabba.
1 second, because we gather more questions. We have...
No,
Yeah, one
please,
second.
yes,
We
before I forget.
Okay.
Before I forget, I'll answer it. The recruitment of Haredim is a very deep cultural problem because since the state was established, most of them do not take part in this issue of serving in the army. Now to recruit them, it means a cultural change. It cannot be by law. It cannot be between Sunday and Monday. It takes time. It takes education. It takes attitude. To change the attitude of the whole Haredi community to serve the state. And you know what? Parts how they look at the state. Because at least part of the Haredi communities do not see the Israel as totally legitimate state, because the state officially doesn't force Shmirat Shabbat or Kashrut or things like this, and they see it as a state which not sure that this is what we want. So why? To defend it. Many of them, they live in New York, they live in Brooklyn, they live in other places because they don't believe in it. This is not a real Jewish state according to their criteria. Okay, so it's not easy now to change their mindset to start going to the army and fight. There are many Haredim who go to the army. There are many of them. But those who are more in the media are those who are against.
Okay, there was another question.
Yes.
One second. First the
Good
gentleman.
evening.
First the gentleman. He raised the hand before you. Okay? And then we will come to you.
Speak in English, then eventually I can translate in Italian. I'd like to ask you something about the right party. Oh, sorry. So about the right party, because I think that outside Israel, there are, well, me for instance, I can't understand one thing that is very important. So we had lots of elections, of course, like it happened in Italy. So Italy and Israel, that's very close to each other for the politics. But I understand and I agree, and a lot of people agree, that when the right is winning in Israel, the right has the right and the power to make a government and to go on. So what lots of people can't understand is why we are just talking about Netanyahu and few people that are now old, a lot, very old. And this is something that happened also in Italy with Berlusconi and the government. There are no new people. There is no a new, let's say, leadership that can really bring the right ideas. I'm talking about right ideas in this state. And this is very important.
Thank you.
In my opinion, also, I would just want to join one thing. It's very important also for the agreement and for the politics we need to bring on with the states like Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and so on, in order to see what's going on in the future when the war will be over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Yoram. Please, short questions.
Yes, very short question. I have been as mitnadev in different bases, military bases, until July. But the question, and I know very well the mood of the soldiers. We think about the hostages. We think about more than 700 soldiers that are dying in this war. And I know that you are very famous professor and a University of Bari-Ilan, and he was 25 years in the it's difficult to talk about peace, but connected to the other person, about your proposal that you did, if I'm not wrong, about 2012, about, we spoke a lot of this mantra, to people, to nation, to people, to nation, and we saw what's happened 7 October. But your proposal, 8 Emirates, can you explain, please, to us what you mean? תודה רבה.
Okay, one second. Let me see if there are other questions. If no, we will allow. Yes, please.
A short question. Who you prefer between Trump and Kamala for Israel?
Okay, there is a lady behind you.
My question is related. You were talking about Obama before. You were talking about Obama before and his influence with Iran. So I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay, so thank you very much. Now you have the opportunity to answer to these 4 questions and then to close our
Okay, let's
session.
start
Please.
first of all with a comment about the Emirates, which is, my view, very important. In very short, the states in the Middle East are divided to roughly to 2 kinds: failing states and successful states. Failing states are Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Sudan, Algeria potentially. Let's say these are the failures. The successful ones are Kuwait, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, Ajman, Kaiwin. These are the 7 Emirates, in addition to Saudi Arabia and Oman. Altogether 12 successful countries. The question is, why are those failures and why are those successes? One would say because of the oil. Wrong. Iraq has a lot of oil, and Iraq is a failing state. Libya has a lot of oil, failing state, as you know. Dubai has no oil and no gas. And Dubai is heaven on earth. Very successful. So evidently, it's not the oil. Because if it was the oil, Dubai would be a hell, because it doesn't have oil. And Iraq and Libya would be a heaven. Okay? But it's totally opposite. So what is the reason for the failure of those and the success of those? The answer is the social construction of these states. All the failing states are conglomerates of clans, ethnic groups like Arabs, Kurds, Turkmens, Berbers, religious groups, Muslims, Christians, Yazidis, Alawis, Druze, and others, and sectarian groups, Shia, Sunnah, Salafis, Sufis, and all kinds of others. While the successful states, each and every one is one single clan, one single family. Kuwait belongs to a family named Al-Sabah. Qatar belongs to a family named Al-Thani. Abu Dhabi belongs to a family named Al-Nahyan. Dubai belongs to
You go ahead.
Al-Maktoum. Saudi Arabia belongs to Al-Saud.
Saud.
Means if you base a state on a Cosa Nostra, and I'm serious, on a family, you get a successful state. If you base a state on Western ideas about nationalism, liberalism, communism, socialism, patriotism, and all these isms which were imported from different cultures, you get a mayhem. You get a hell. And this is actually what explains this division of the Middle East to successful states and failing states. Now, if we have to solve the Palestinian problem, which system will we take? The successful one or the failing one? It's clear. We don't take a failing. Means if you create a Palestinian state with all the clans, and the Palestinian society is very clannish. If you tell me somebody's name, I'll tell you where he lives.
Nusayba.
Because if he, Nusayba, Jerusalem, if his name is Jabri, Kawasme, Nache, Tamimi, or Abu Snaina, he lives in Hebron. And if his name is Arikat, like Saib Arikat, he lives in Jericho. If his name is Barghouti, or Abu Ain, or Tawil, he lives in Ramallah. If his name is Masri, or Tukan, or Shaka, he lives in Shechem, in Nablus. If his name is Karmi, he lives in Tulkarem. This is how it works. Because if he goes to another town, he's in exile. He is not in his hometown. Okay? This is the culture of the Middle East. You know what? Once Italy was also Emirates. And how united Italy until this very day, you know better than me. Okay? So this is actually what works. In the Middle East, tribalism is not only alive and kicking, it is alive and killing. If you merge them together, you get another Syria, another Iraq. If you establish emirates in each and every town in Judea and Samaria, you get the emirates like in the Gulf. And this is what my suggestion is, to establish emirates for the clans of Hebron in Hebron, for the clans of Nablus in Nablus, and so forth. Israel should forever remain in the rural areas, offer Israeli citizenship to the villagers. Those who lived in the villages are like 15% of the population, while Israel should keep like 85% of the land. After all, this is our land, old Eretz Israel. And this is the only solution which corresponds with sociology. And this is why this is the only solution which has prospects to survive. What happened with Gaza? Until the war, I look at Gaza as one state, functioning state, because it was under Hamas, and we should deter Hamas, and really deter Hamas, not in theory. Now, when we are planning, hoping to get rid of Hamas, it's not easy. It's very hard because they are hiding behind women and children. And they are in the caves. They're very hard to catch them. Yet, we are determined, so far, to get rid of Hamas. If we succeed, we can go to the administrative division of Gaza to 5 districts. From the north to the south, Gaza is traditionally, all the way from the days of the Egyptians, divided to 5 districts. Beit Hanun, Bet Lahiya in the north, the city of Gaza, Dir el-Balach, Khan Yunis, Rafah. And beyond Rafah is Egypt. These are the 5 districts. This could be base for the emirates. 5 emirates in Gaza, based on the local families. No Hamas, no Abbas. Because Abbas, as you know, is not a friend of Israel as well. So this is the only solution which is connected to the sociology of the people.
We have added 3 questions: leadership, the new president, and Obama.
Look, we as Israelis should not talk about the elections in the United States, because the Americans view this interference as interference in their domestic issues. Although this decision has a lot to do with the Middle East, a lot. Yet, it has a lot to do also with Europe, also with Ukraine, also with China, also with many issues on the global arena. So we in Israel, we keep our views for ourselves. But, in order to answer the question, the Israeli liberal side of the political divide support Kamala Harris. Most of the people in the traditional, in the conservative parts of Israel apparently support Trump. They remember who moved the embassy to Jerusalem. And you know what? Let me tell you a word. As you all know, Jerusalem was destroyed by Rome almost 2,000 years ago. In my view, Italy should have been the first state to have its embassy in Jerusalem. Because of this history. Rome is here. The Roman heritage, you can see it in Rome everywhere we go in the city. You can see the Arch of Victory.
Titus.
The Arch of Titus. Rome should have been the first capital to recognize Israel and to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of the Jews. And in my humble view, the Jewish voice should be this, about this, apart from all the other cheshbonot, all the other accounts, because of history.
The last question on leadership. Do you see any new leaders coming up in the state of
Israel?
Yes.
Look, just to remind you, Netanyahu, when he started his career, his first position was the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. Who knew about him? Okay, well, the people who know. Okay? Leaders are waiting for their time. Where was Meloni 20 years ago? Who knew her?
Nobody would tell.
Okay, so this is what I mean. Or Berlusconi, 20 years before he became prime minister. Leaders are being built by the position in Israel as well.
Thank you so much. A big round of applause to Mordechai Kedar. Thank you all for having joined us, and thank you to NOAM for the nice hospitality. Thank you.
And Tfilat Arvit.